Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about Visit to the Unknown from Tensei Shitara Slime Talk, and so without any ado let's begin. Visit to the Unknown, 09 Negotiations with Michelle Part 1. Now that the fight was over, Feldera returned to cooking pancakes as if nothing had happened. Michelle seemed a little taken aback at suddenly being abandoned, but she now walked towards Feldera. She saw that the children looked afraid, and then she opened her mouth as if remembering something. Sorry about what just happened. We were being spied on, so I had to call it trash. But I was really surprised that you were eating something that looked delicious. She apologized. It was the truth. According to the regular reports from the informers, the food that the resistance were eating was supposed to be tragic. She had thought it would be the case here, and yet they were eating pancakes. So it was no wonder that she was shocked. Kahahaha. Is that not right? Do you want some too? Well, eating the same thing would be a good shortcut to clearing things up, wouldn't it? Michelle felt that Feldera had that in mind when offering some to her. Thank you. I shall accept. She received the plate with a little hesitation. And then she began to eat. A fork and knife had been brought out seemingly from nowhere, and she used them to cut out a piece and bring it to her mouth. The way she ate was like an example of sophistication. You wouldn't imagine someone like her eating something as commonplace as pancakes, and yet she somehow looked good doing it. It's delicious. She muttered. While it was not all that in terms of presentation, the taste felt so nostalgic to her. It was not like the refined food she ate in the city. It felt very homemade. And through eating the pancakes, the sense of caution the children felt towards Michelle began to fade away. She was human just like them. Michelle noticed this change and smiled. That sealed the deal for them. The smile of a beautiful woman is most potent indeed. Even those who had been sure they were going to be killed a moment ago were softened by that smile. Everyone was now relieved, as they wholly believed that the battle was now over. But then again, there were now some who began to feel anxious in a different way. What was Michelle's purpose? General, Michelle? From what you just said, you have not really come to purge us after all. It was Carmen who asked the first question. He had been called a traitor, after all. He anxiously scratched his head. Then Michelle looked at him with a puzzled expression. She chewed, her mouth full of pancake, savoring the taste before swallowing it. It was a childish gesture that did not match such icy beauty. She smiled with satisfaction and then glanced at Carmen. Purge. And then she thought about it. Oh, that. Hiragi was making such a fuss about it. You know how he can be like. I don't think you are a traitor just because you let the resistance escape. After all, what would that make me? I've been sending them resources all this time. She dropped this bomb as if it were an afterthought. What? Sending resources? Wait. General Michelle? What do you mean? Michelle looked at them without concern. It's just as I said. In the first place, if I really meant to have you purged, I wouldn't have come here myself. Quite the opposite, really. I came here so you wouldn't be killed. She said all of this in a light manner as if it were below her pancake in terms of importance. Those of the resistance were very shocked by this. What? But she is the leader of the empire. So, who have we been fighting all this time? I can't believe it. Is she trying to trick us? Etc. No one could believe Michelle. And they did not know how to react. And so Sharma stepped forward as if to represent all of the adults. I am Sharma, leader of this department. General Michelle, I have a question, if you do not mind. I don't. Ask me anything you want. Michelle replied casually. She had no intention of hiding anything at this point. Of course, being believed was a different matter. Well then. The first question. Is it true that you have been sending us resources up until now? That is true. I have always felt that we should help each other, as we are the same species. However, the reality is that this is quite difficult. A city was destroyed through a revolt. It will be quite a feat to change the minds of those who live in the city now. Please wait. Then why do you send us supplies? As protector of the city, are we not your enemies? It cannot be helped that you would think like that. However, I think it is horribly twisted that we must see each other as enemies when our number as a species has fallen so low. Still, we cannot take in every refugee either. What I can offer now is a place to live and hide. Also a small supply of food. In other words, you could not take us in, but you wouldn't abandon us either? Why could you not tell us that? Then maybe all of this fighting would not have happened. Sharma was about to say this, but she was interrupted. It's nothing but hypocrisy. Rindo shouted. He was glaring at Michelle with eyes that burned with hatred. And then he continued his attack. You want us to suffer while you live in comfort. And yet you have no shame at all. Michelle glanced at Rindo without changing her expression in the least. This was because she was talking to Sharma, the representative, not Rindo. Rindo. Be quiet. But that's an order. Michelle is talking to me. I am speaking for us all. Sharma was intimidating enough that Rindo became silent. Though Sharma did feel that Rindo's outburst had allowed her to realize that Michelle had yet to address the real issue here. I see. In other words, the people of the city do not trust us. Yes. You people were unable to trust us as well. You would have suspected a trap and we would not have been able to cooperate. After all, it was impossible for every survivor of the Great War to enter the cities. And so there was a need to select. Fairness was lost. As was justice. Those who already lived in the city and the refugees. They were all human life. And it was because of this, that individual talent became the deciding factor. But who could decide? How could humans who are not God decide the worth of a human? And so the standard for selection became very simple. Those who already lived in the city and those who didn't. Such an explanation would not be satisfactory. Of course, it wouldn't. And so the emperor of the mechanized empire of Omsbine initiated it without explanation and by using force. Michelle explained this to them, but it was meaningless. She never believed that they would understand. Which was no surprise, as she herself did not understand. That was the decision at the time. No one could go against it. I know you will not understand and I realize you must be angry. However, it is the truth. Understand. How dare. Rindo stopped here and broke into a fit of tears. The others all listened to Michelle in a state of shock. It was hardly a surprise. The difficult lives they had lived, the deaths of friends, all manner of hardships, there was no clear reason why it had to be them who had been burdened with it all. And so why are you helping us? Do you want to prolong our suffering? No, that's wrong. The man over there was close. I don't care if you call us hypocrites. However, I truly want to do good. Bulletin but. One day, the cities will no longer be able to function. When that time comes, the people who have been living comfortably will find it very difficult to survive. So, from the perspective of danger management, wouldn't it be important to consider all kinds of possibilities? In other words, as long as we survive, the cities can fall? Yes. That is an incredibly arrogant way to think. Sharma shouted, but Michelle didn't budge. Belief in what you were doing was right. It was something she had decided on the moment she joined the military. It was justice in her eyes. Well then, let me ask you this. What do you think would have been the right thing to do back then? That. Sharma hesitated. She had not been born back then, and yet not a day went by where she didn't think about it. She hated this world and wanted to know the reason that the Empire had made things this way. It was because of those crimes that they felt they were on the side of justice. But was it really right to say that the Empire was evil? Sharma had always had this doubt in her mind. You cannot answer? Well, let me tell you then. If they had made the wrong decision back then, humanity would have gone extinct long ago. Michelle declared without hesitation. You are saying that you helped us because we could possibly be a way for humanity to survive? Do you think we would believe that? The words of someone who stands at the top of the empire. There was pain in Sharma's voice. She was now finding it difficult to believe that Michelle was lying, however, it was too much to take in all at once. We will not be able to start negotiating if you do not believe me. Michelle said in a troubled voice. Surely it is fine now, General Michelle? Miss Sharma, Rindo. I am working for the Empire. I am sorry for hiding this from you. But it was necessary. Zaza had been watching quietly up until now, but he suddenly opened his mouth. There was an uproar after that, but Sharma silenced them with a shout. Still, it became necessary to move to someplace quieter. They were currently in a corner of a warehouse that was used for meetings. Why was I called here as well? It's probably because everyone knows you are amazing now, Master. Oh? Tell me more. Like I said. Lord Ramaris is right. You did wonderfully in that fight. So that is what happens when Lord Feldera gets serious. I was very impressed. It is no wonder that your presence was required here. Ho ho. I see. Such words were exchanged in the room, but no one else chimed in. Michelle was the only one who looked at Feldera with interest. But she still gave little more than a curious glance. Ramiris and Beretta looked at each other and sighed with relief. Feldera was quite happy and satisfied now. It was very peaceful and no one had a problem. And it was in that atmosphere that negotiations began. First, I want you to let me explain. It was Zaza who started. Before the Great War, Zaza was a soldier who was supposed to have been stationed in the 7th city, which was the one that had fallen. He was a first lieutenant in rank and would have led squadrons, but the Great War erupted before then. Zaza's family, his beloved wife and daughter, lived in the farming district instead of the city. Zaza didn't know what to do. Even if he went to the city now, it was already covered in flames and there was nothing that he could do. In that case, Zaza took his men and decided to help the refugees instead. He was worried about his own family, but he prioritized work that was close to the city rather than the countryside. And his sense of responsibility as a military man led him to prioritize the mission rather than his family. However, this decision would mean misery for Zaza. The fighting had started in the city, but it soon spread to the countryside. The whole world was wrapped in the flames of nuclear weapons. There was no such thing as a safe place outside of the city now. The countryside was no longer safe, and there was no hope of survival for Zaza's family. Amidst guilt and regret, Zaza hoped to at least protect those who had survived. He heard that the 6th city was taking people in, and so Zaza escorted the refugees. However, this gave birth to the worst tragedy of all. The fall of the 6th city. There was mass chaos. Zaza's men were pulled into it and forced to fight. But who was a friend and who was foe? The people who he had been escorting attacked him and Zaza was wounded. But the cannons of the city soldiers who struck back also hit Zaza. All 4 of his limbs were blown off and his unit crumbled. It was chaos and confusion. It was Michelle's troops, who were working at regaining order and retaking the city, that ultimately saved Zaza from death. And while he was saved, everything was finished by the time that he regained consciousness. Yes, everything. I want to die. It was as Zaza was thinking this that Michelle came to see him. And she said, "If that life means nothing to you, I will take it. Not for the Empire, but to protect those who have survived. Help me." Perhaps the memory had been idealized, but those words were like a treasure to Zaza. And so he became a cyborg soldier and worked as an informant for Michelle. So, that is how it happened. I pretended to have discovered hideouts that General Michelle prepared. And then I told you all. And, what about the surviving generators and life support machines? Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe for more content.